Welcome back to Midnight Pasta. Tonight's tale may follow you into your dreams. Subscribe if you haven't already. It helps keep the lights off and the chills on. I've always liked to hike alone. There's something about being out there, just you and the trees, that feels honest in a way people don't. You don't have to pretend in the woods. You don't have to smile, or nod, or check your phone. You just walk and breathe, and let the quiet eat up the noise inside your head. That's why I started venturing off the marked trails. Not because I'm reckless. I always carry maps, extra water, bear spray, but because I wanted the quiet to be complete. No chance of running into other hikers or hearing some kid scream at his dad for more granola bars. Just isolation. Just peace. It was late October when I found the bag. Fog hung low that day, brushing against my legs like something alive. The trail I'd found was barely more than a game trail, choked with moss and draped in spider webs. No markers, no footprints, just the faint suggestion of a path winding deeper into the trees. I'd been walking for maybe 2 hours when I stopped to rest near a rotting log. That's when I noticed it, tucked beneath a fallen tree, half swallowed by earth and green. A faded green canvas bag. Looked like it had been there for years. First, I thought it might have belonged to a hunter or a surveyor. Something about the way it was positioned felt purposeful, like it had been hidden. I cleared away some of the leaves and tugged it out. The strap crumbled in my hands. Inside, everything was damp, soft with mildew. Old wrappers, a torn notebook with pages stuck together. And then, at the bottom, wrapped in a crumbling flannel shirt, I found the camera. It was one of those Kodak point-and-shoot models from the 90s. The kind you'd see on the floor of your grandparents' closet, next to a dusty shoebox of photos. Black plastic, scratched and dull but intact, heavy in the hand. There was still film inside. I could hear it click faintly when I pressed the shutter. No digital screen, no battery pack. Just a winding wheel and a little red button. I turned it over in my hands, wiping off the grime. For reasons I couldn't quite explain, it made my chest feel tight. Not in a threatening way, more like nostalgia or deja vu. I almost left it there. Thought maybe I should turn it in somewhere, but where? This trail wasn't even on the map, and it wasn't like there was any ID in the bag, just mold and dust. So I took it, slipped it into my pack, and hiked back the way I came, fog curling around my boots the whole way. I didn't realize until I got home that the fog had followed me longer than it should have. Even as I reached the main road, I remember glancing back and seeing it still clinging to the edge of the woods, like it didn't want to let me go. That night, I left the camera on my dresser. I didn't think much of it until the next morning when I noticed it had moved. Just a few inches, but I know I didn't touch it, and I live alone. I chalked it up to memory. Maybe I'd set it down weird. Maybe gravity shifted it. But that was the first moment something inside me whispered, "You weren't supposed to take it." Still, I didn't listen. I kept it, and that was the first mistake. The camera didn't move again after that first night. Not that I noticed, anyway. I told myself it must have just shifted when I took off my pack. Maybe the vibration carried through the dresser. Logical, safe. But I started sleeping lighter after that, like my body knew something my mind wouldn't admit. I left it alone for the most part. I didn't have the right tools to develop the film, and I wasn't about to take it to a Walgreens and risk someone tossing it or ruining it. I figured I'd get around to it eventually. Maybe take it to the college lab downtown. Maybe make it a weekend project. But life got in the way. At first it was little things. I missed a call for a freelance job I'd been hoping to land. Somehow it never rang, just went straight to voicemail. The next day, I got stood up by a buddy who'd been talking for weeks about grabbing beers. He swore we never made plans. Said, I must have imagined it. Then Amanda, my girlfriend of 3 years, broke up with me. No fight, no cheating, no long talk about growing apart. She just said she didn't feel right around me anymore, that something about me had shifted. Her words, not mine. "You feel distant," she said, eyes darting toward the corner of the room where the camera sat. "Like I'm watching someone pretend to be you." That one stuck with me. I didn't connect the dots at first, didn't even think about the camera. I chalked it all up to bad luck, maybe a run of depression. It happens, people fall off, things unravel. I just had to write it out. But the dream started next, always the same. I'd be standing in the woods, fog thick around my knees, the exact spot I found the camera. I'd be holding it in both hands, lifting it to my eye. But no matter how hard I looked, the viewfinder never showed the trees. Instead, it showed me. Not as I am, but wrong. Paler, thinner, my eyes dark and hollow, like someone had scooped them out and replaced them with something watching through me. And just behind me, always half in frame, was a figure, blurred, tall, still, face obscured by shadow or maybe static. I could never make it out. Every time I woke up, the dread stuck to me like sweat. I'd catch myself glancing toward the dresser, half expecting to see the camera pointed at me. It never was. But the air around it felt colder. Eventually, I shoved it in the bottom drawer. Out of sight, out of mind. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, my bank card's been frozen twice for purchases I didn't make. I lost another job opportunity when the interviewer said I never showed, despite the calendar alert and Uber receipts saying otherwise. I've started forgetting things, where I parked, who I called, whether I locked the front door. People don't answer when I text anymore, or if they do, they ask if I'm okay. Say I've been off, distant, quiet. One friend said I sound like I'm underwater on the phone. Another told me she didn't think it was me texting her at all. I keep thinking back to the bag in the woods, how hidden it was, like someone had buried it, like it didn't want to be found. And yet, it was waiting, like it knew I'd come. I'd almost forgotten about the camera until it found me again. It was a Sunday morning. Rain tapped at the windows like fingernails. I'd decided to clean out my apartment, mostly to distract myself from how quiet it had become. There was a heaviness in the air lately, like the apartment itself was holding its breath. I opened the bottom dresser drawer, half expecting it to be empty. But there it was, the old Kodak camera resting right where I'd left it. Except it wasn't. The layer of dust was gone, the strap had been unfurled, and the lens was pointed upward, toward the edge of the drawer, like it had been watching through the wood. I stared at it for a long while. Something about it pulled. My chest felt tight. My fingertips tingled when I touched the leather strap. The plastic was cold, colder than it should have been. I should have felt afraid, but instead, I felt compelled, like I owed it something. I drove to an old photo lab just outside town, one of the few places that still developed film the traditional way. Run by a quiet man named Carter who'd been there for years, the kind who didn't ask many questions. He took the camera without blinking, told me to come back in 3 days. But when I walked in on the 3rd day, he looked different, paler, shaken. "You sure this roll was yours?" he asked, glancing over his shoulder at the darkroom door. "Pretty sure," I said. "Why?" He didn't answer. Just handed me an envelope and told me not to open it there. I left without pressing. Back home, I sat on the floor of my apartment, the envelope in my lap. For a long time, I just stared at it. The photos inside were still warm, like they'd just come out of the bath. My fingers trembled as I pulled them free. The first few were normal. Overexposed woods, blurry ground shots, the kind of junk you'd expect from a roll left in the woods for years. But then I saw myself, in frame, standing at the edge of the trees, looking straight at the camera. Only, I never took that photo, and I don't remember being in those clothes, or standing like that, or having that expression. My face looked drained, like someone had pulled all the color out of it. My eyes were glassy, lifeless, and in every photo after that, I was closer. Same position, same expression, just a few feet nearer to the camera each time. Until the last one, the final photo wasn't of me. Not exactly. It was of a doorway, my apartment door. And standing in the frame, halfway in the shadows, was the blurred figure from my dreams. No face, just the shape of a man, tall and narrow, his outline flickering at the edges like an old tele. And in his hands, he was holding the camera. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure in the photo, half shadow, half static, standing in my doorway with the camera cradled like something sacred. I'd left the prints on my kitchen counter, but it felt like they were watching me, even through the walls. Around 3:00 a.m., I heard the shutter click, just once, like the camera had taken a picture on its own. I rushed into the kitchen, heart pounding in my throat, but the prints were undisturbed. The camera still sat on the counter, its lens turned toward the hallway now, like it had been moved. I stared at it for a long time, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did, not then. But in the days that followed, things got worse. I started seeing the man from the photo at the corner of my vision, always standing still, watching, in mirrors, through windows, reflected on dark surfaces that shouldn't have shown anything. Every glimpse felt like a warning, or maybe a promise. My phone stopped working. Calls wouldn't go through. My laptop screen glitched and flickered until it finally just died. Lights in my apartment would hum low and deep, pulsing like a heartbeat. One morning I woke to find the camera sitting on my chest, lens pointed at my face. I threw it in the dumpster behind the building. By the time I got back upstairs, it was sitting on my couch. I stopped eating. I stopped sleeping. I stopped leaving. I just sat, listening for the shutter, waiting for the final photo to be taken. I think I finally understood. The camera didn't just take pictures. It marked you. It saw some part of you, some hidden thread, and pulled it out, tangled it into its film-like spider silk. Every photo it developed was more than just an image. It was a binding, a story rewritten, a life folded in on itself like cheap paper. I needed to break the loop, so I went back to that forgotten trail in the mountains. Fog rolled through the trees like it had that first day. The world felt quiet again, but not in a peaceful way. More like something was waiting. I stood at the base of the same fallen tree where I'd first found the bag. And I took one last photo. I didn't smile. I didn't breathe. I just raised the camera, pointed it at myself, and pressed the shutter. The click echoed, then nothing. I left it there, gently, like laying down something dead. The camera, the photos, all of it. I didn't look back. That was 6 weeks ago. But last night I went for a walk, just to clear my head. The streets were empty, still. I passed a trailhead just outside town, near the base of the woods. And there, nestled in the brush like it had never left, was the old Kodak camera, waiting again. Lens pointed toward the road, strap curled like a question mark. This morning, a news alert popped up on my phone. A young couple, hikers, missing near the trailhead, last seen 2 nights ago. Their last photo uploaded to social media? A blurry shot, fog, trees, and behind them, half hidden in the frame, a pale man holding a camera. That wraps up tonight's pasta. If your lights flicker, don't blame the wiring until the next shadow creeps in. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It helps more than you know. And if you liked the story, don't forget to hit the like button. In the comments below, share your own horror experience. I'll be reading after midnight. Good night. See you again tomorrow.